Child labor is defined as any legal or illegal activity that is mentally, physically, socially, morally dangerous and harmful to children. It's any type of work that prevents them from getting an education or to have their own relaxation time. Because according to the United Nations on the Conventions on the Rights of a Child, children they have many rights, but in terms of an education and the right to be engaged in relaxation and play, that is also their right. The total children population within the age group of 5 to 17 years old, 657,697 children, and that's all parishes. Of that number, 53,274 were working children. Working children, not necessarily child labor. Child work is deemed as work that is suitable for children, so they can help out in the homes to do work according to their age group. It doesn't affect their health, and it also does not prevent them from going to school. And this is something that the International Labour Organization encourages, because what it does, it affords those children to become independent and give them a sense of responsibility. 13 to 14, they can be engaged in child work. Now, child work, when they're working for those 4 hours per day, not exceeding 14 hours per week, they also get wages. And of course, in terms of the minimum wage, they're not supposed to be getting less than the minimum wage. Of that 53,000 children, working children, there are approximately 38,000 children engaged in child labor, and that is alarming. Just over 18,000 children between the ages of 5 to 12 years old are engaged in child labor. Just to remind you that 5 to 12 years old, they're not supposed to be working for economic gain. So this is quite alarming. It shows that we have a lot more work to be done. In terms of the 13 to 14 years old, now these are children who are legal to be engaged in light work. That number is 5,992. So although they are legal to work the 13 to 14 age group, obviously one of the factors that allows them to work, they have not been adhering to those, that's the employers. In terms of the 15 to 17 age group, just over 13,000 children were engaged in child labor. So as you can see, from that 38,000, the age group is between the age 5 to 12 years old. Some of the most common forms of child labor in Jamaica has to do with children in the markets, vending. Children are also engaged in the agricultural sector, which speaks to the fishing markets, and also in the family homes. Now, when you get to the family homes, I know that parents may not be looking at it as child labor, but as I mentioned before, we have to be mindful of work that is being conducted in the homes. One, because when you speak of a domestic worker and you think of all the chemicals that that individual has to be using, you also have to look at that perspective from the child. And based on the definition, it says that nothing that is going to harm the child's health or the development. So those are some of the most common forms of child labor in Jamaica. I'll mention 2 or 3 of the contributing factors that would cause this to happen. 1, poverty. As we know, in Jamaica, there is an issue with poverty. 2 has to do with a breakdown of the family structure, because some of these households, they are headed by one parent, and in most of the times it's a female. The other factor is lack of knowledge. So persons are not aware that this is child labor. One of the things that I've realized is that over the years, you have now parents, back then they were children, they grew up, they were helping their families on the farms. To them, it was not a problem. So they come up and the cycle continues. They're saying, okay, I did it as a child. It did not affect me. So it's okay for my child to do so. And this is what we want to get. We want to get the message out there that this is not acceptable. And there are certain restrictions, not to say that the child is not supposed to help out, but there are restrictions. The Child Care and Protection Act states that no child below the age of 13 is supposed to be engaged in any form of economic activity, which means that they're not supposed to be paid. Ages 13 to 14, the Act also speaks to it, where the Minister of Labour has the authority to set a prescribed light work list. So ages 13 to 14 are legal to work, but it's dependent on their age. It can't be less than 13. It has to do with the type of hours, and that's 4 hours per day, not exceeding 14 hours per week. And it also speaks to the type of work that the child should be engaged in. The mandate of the Child Labour Unit is to liaise with stakeholders, both locally and internationally, to strengthen or create a supportive environment so that we can eliminate child labour in Jamaica. In terms of combating this issue of child labour in Jamaica, what we're doing this year, we are going to be doing an extensive public education session. We have done one in Denham Town recently. Apart from that, we'll be conducting town hall meetings in each region. And from those town hall meetings, we'll be concentrating our efforts on those parishes that fall within that region. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to the nook and cranny, as they say, nook and crannies of those parishes to ensure that the message gets out there. Another thing is that we have just signed an MOU with the US Department of Labor, because they're giving us technical assistance to also address this issue. We are now looking at finalizing our policy on child labor. We have a draft. So before the end of this financial year, we are supposed to have a finalized national policy on child labor. So what we know is that child labor is not just something just for the government to address. We have to take a multi-sectoral approach to it. And as a result, we have all representatives from these entities who are part of the committee, where we're going to put our hearts together, persons with the respective expertise areas. They can provide the necessary assistance in terms of how we go about to eliminate this scourge. We want persons to be more vigilant of their surroundings. If you go to a wholesale, you see a child lifting heavy stuff. In terms of a child, you see not going to school, because remember, children are supposed to be going to school. So if you have seen cases where children are not going to school and they are working, you can call 1-888-PROTECT and you can report it. Or you can call the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, and we will provide the necessary information. We have a slogan. It's the Jamaica says no to child labour. And this is what I want to leave with persons, that we need their support. We need everybody to be on board. And as long as we work together, at least we're doing our part to achieve the Vision 2030 goal, which is to make Jamaica a place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business.
My name is Rosalie Gage-Gray. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. The Child Protection and Family Services Agency was formed out of the merger of the Child Development Agency and the Office of the Children's Registry that occurred in November 2017. We have primarily mandate for children who are deemed to be in need of care and protection. That's children who have been abused, abandoned, neglected, children who are in moral danger, and children otherwise at risk. And so we provide interventions for them through investigations, counseling support, referral to allied agencies for support. And so we do the whole gamut of child protection work within Jamaica. So a child who is engaged in child labour is a child in need of care and protection, and so that will fall under the ambit of us providing support. So if we receive reports of a child who is engaged in child labour, then our intervention would be to do the investigations and then to do whatever corrective actions are necessary, whatever referrals we need to make with respect to a child who is engaged in that format. Now, in a Jamaican context, most families think that the child should play a part, and if the whole economic situation suggests that, children help their parents with these responsibilities. One thing we say that whatever the child is engaged in, based on the age, you have to follow the rules in terms of that. But we would say the child's engagement in those activities should not prevent them from getting a good education, should not put them at risk in terms of their health, and they should have time for recreation. So it shouldn't prevent them from enjoying the general rights they have as a child. So parents always say to us, what about chores? There's chores and there's chores, right? So a child can make the bed, A child can help to sweep up the yard. In the country they say you have to sweep the yard, you have to carry water, you have to thing. So in carrying the water, it depends on the age, what size bucket you're gonna use, things like those. How far you have to go, are you supervised when you go to the river to pick up the water, because that in itself is a risk as well. So things like those, So in the context, in terms of the context in Jamaica and the cultural context, we have to engage parents in that way so that they understand. Because people always say, I've been doing this all along and I did carry water and I did go to the field and nothing ever happened to me and all of those things. So we have to give them the information and encourage them to make sure that the children are experiencing their childhood and not burdened by adult responsibilities. We have people leaving their younger kids with older ones who are still children, and whether for reason to go to work or going elsewhere. That in itself is risky as well, because a child's response and reaction to an emergency is going to be very different from an adult, and so those responsibilities should really not be placed with a child. Child labor robs the child of their genuine childhood and the things that they want to do. You have the worst forms of child labor, which is trafficking, and that is something that as a country we are grappling with, and through the task force in the Ministry of Justice, then we work with that task force to seek to do public education and also to look at the policy framework and also to do implementation and support for families who are so affected. We focus a lot on the children on the street because they are visible, they can see them. That in itself is a hazard, because one, they have to be dashing through cars and vehicles, motor vehicles. The emissions from the fumes and stuff that they are inhaling in that environment, not good for them either. And so we have to educate our populace as to what is child labor, what is permissible, what is not permissible, and also seek to assist parents, because sometimes we understand that parents would probably send them out to do the hustling, or they will go without the parents' knowledge, because parents themselves are at work. When you talk to the children that you find on the street in your efforts to get them to remain at home, it's really economically viable to be out there. If you think of what it is for bus fare and lunch for the week, and if they can go there and hustle and get that, then they feel that they are contributing. When you talk to the children, they say they are assisting their parents. In our intervention for children who have been reported to us, such as a child in need of care and protection, abused, abandoned, neglected, we seek to firstly to assess the home environment and the familial contact that the child has, to see if we can intervene within the home and community setting to have the child remain there. So sometimes a little counseling support or talking to the parent or explaining to them the situation, might help. Sometimes it needs further intervention. Sometimes it might require the child to be removed to a place of safety, for example, for a short while, whilst we address the home situation. Sometimes it is that we need to provide support or refer them to other allied services. The intervention is varied, and it is based on the individual needs of the children that we find. There are certain areas in the corporate area and other townships that our officers have been monitoring to see if they are seeing children and trying to get them off the streets. and they tell you that it is for economic reasons that they are there. And we find that most of them are registered in school. Most of them, they come out at a certain time, either very late at night, or they would come out at after school hours or early morning. On weekends you might see them more. So we have been working with the police to seek to it that they get off the streets primarily, and we also to identify the family. Sometimes they don't want to tell you the names. Worse if the parent didn't know that they are out there. They are not going to give you those names. And sometimes I think we have taken some of them, and they take us home to say, to parents, and you are able to talk to the parents there, and then you'll see the real situation that is driving them. I think the efforts will definitely see a reduction. And I think one of the things that we need to look at is how can we, by educating the children, get them involved in some kind of volunteerism, some formalized system whereby they could go and assist as counselors in camps or other things, formalized things. If you have a community center and you're doing some work there, whether through SGC or so, you could engage some of the youngsters. We recognize that most parents want what is best for their children, and so their efforts is to see. But when people don't know, out of ignorance, they really don't know that the children should not be doing that. And as I said, the cultural context in which they operate, I carry the water, so you must carry it too. And that the general feeling that the children have to help out, and sometimes it robs them. They can't go play with their friends. There's no set time for them to enjoy life as a child. And improvements have been seen, but greater levels of collaboration can always help in terms of assisting the children.